Yo, what it is, everybody? Thanks for tuning back into another episode here on the Speedbug channel. Today we got a day about commuting on the R1M. Now, you guys see me do this video quite a few times on my other ones and stuff like that, and y'all seem to really enjoy it. And when I switch up the view and watch me just kind of drive through, and you just kind of listen to the voiceover, so that's what we're going to do here on this one. So let's go on ahead and talk about commuting here on the 2018 R1M and the fact that mine is actually modded. So does it commute well? Let me first and foremost say it actually does. And for a bike that has a pretty heavily raked over position, it actually is pretty well. And I think a big part of that and a big thanks to that is how wide and how much cushion the seat has and how wide the front tank is. And even though it's a track orientated motorcycle, it's, more dominant on the circuit track than, like a drag strip or anything like that, like how a Hayabusa or something is set up. It's very comfortable, and riding this bike and then obviously getting on to the V4, you really obviously see how much wider the R1M is than the V4. The V4 is really, really skinny, really seems very, very narrow. Obviously that a lot of people say, in which it is, just like the 959 is. But it definitely has the wider tank and the wider seats, very similar to the GSXR and the BMW. As far as when the bike was stock, obviously I would assume the bike got better gas mileage and stuff like that when it was factory, but I can definitely give you a review after mine has got the exhaust and it's been flashed with a couple other mods here to go along with it. As far as the fuel mileage and stuff like that, I think Yamaha rates it at 39 or something like that. I really haven't driven it too lightly, but so far I think the lowest I saw it was at 30, and it's pretty much averaging about 35 miles per gallon. So it's not absolutely horrible. It doesn't necessarily drink gas as much as like the BMW, the GSXR, or nonetheless the V4, which I think has like a hole in the tank. But it doesn't absolutely get bad gas mileage. As far as the comfort, it's obviously no cruiser, it's no hypermotard, it's no standard cruiser, it's like not a Harley or anything like that. But it is, it's not too bad. It's still hands down, I will say, the worst commuting bike as far as just cruising is that V4. With your feet absolutely just behind you so much and you just so far raked over. Now, even though, like I said, that this bike is definitely track orientated and you are raked over, but you do actually, believe it or not, get to provide yourself a little bit more support in the bottom and thigh area that actually takes a little bit there off of your wrist, so that it's not so much, how would I say, there's not so much pressure riding on the bottom parts of your wrist. So it actually does make the bike a little bit more enjoyable to commute wise. And one thing that you will absolutely notice the first thing upon getting on this motorcycle is that Yamaha is definitely famous for, and it has nothing to do with this generation, but pretty much all of them, is just how flickable the motorcycle is. You find yourself sweeping and going into turns a lot faster than you would normally on a traditional style motorcycle. I definitely go into turns a lot faster on this bike than I do even on my GSXR and BMW. Now, going in the turn, like I mentioned on another video, when you're in the turn and hauling ass, I still think the V4 is just a little bit more stable. But going into turns and stuff like that and flying around and doing, those jackrabbit starts and getting it up in the, the 7,000-8,000 RPM range, just while you're putzing around going through the gears on the street, it actually is a very fun bike. Now, with the exhaust that I have put on it, absolutely makes the world of a difference. Because we all know that if you can add a little bit more noise to the fun that you're having, well, it's probably going to put a little bit more of a smile on your face. And if it doesn't, well, you're pretty lame. After riding the bike for about an hour, hour and a half, which I have, you do tend to notice Some people, it has nothing to do really with this crotch rocket. It's pretty much all of them. Some people tend to suffer a little bit of lower back pain, which I kind of did a little bit, but nothing too severe. You get off, stretch your legs, stretch your hips, you know, all that for 10 minutes or so, and then you can hop right back on. It's not absolutely like brutal where you're like, all right, I'm done riding for the day or anything like that. No, the bike doesn't beat you up like that. It's definitely not Suzuki comfortable by all means. There's no way in hell, but it's definitely not brutal like the V4, where if I'm on that thing for an hour cruising around town, there's no chance in hell I really want to get back on that bike. Now, if I'm flying around hauling ass on it, then and tucked down, that's a different story. Brakes are, even though they do not have Brembos or anything like that, they have their own brakes that Yamaha put on there, and I have no complaints about them. They say, Yamaha, they say they are better than Brembos. I'm not necessarily sure about that, but I can definitely tell you this, they still stop on a dime. So as long as they stop, they're great. I've probably hit them at fastest speed so far is probably around 180 miles an hour. And they did flawlessly. I had no complaints about them. I didn't experience any brake fade, any rotor run out, or the rotors warping or anything like that. So they absolutely worked just fine, back and front. As far as customizing the suspension when you're riding, that is absolutely probably one of the biggest and best things that you could do on this bike on demand. Whether you're having fun going into a corner fast and activate the slide control, which the Ducati has as well, from activating the wheelie control, the lift control, the quick shifter, you know, all these things that are not necessarily new features, but just Yamaha is obviously doing it in its own way. I do really think the lift control and wheelie control on this bike is exceptionally well. I do believe that, in my opinion, that it outdoes the Ducati, and it's finally outdoing the BMW, but granted, my BMW is a 2015. When that bike came out, it was like revolutionary. So given the fact that this bike is 2018, and a lot of its technology, and I'm sure Yamaha took note from it because it has a lot of Owen suspension and active suspension. They have definitely worked together to import, obviously, the best of the best that they could put on it for the time being. So I really tip my hat to that, and the R1M is really doing a great job with the electronic suspension. I have no complaints about that. As far as riding a passenger or anything like that, there is one thing that does suck about this bike, is that you obviously, if you have the back cap on the bike, you have to have, I believe it's like a T27 Torx bit to get the back seat off, because it is made of carbon fiber where the GPS unit is in, and the rear seat, and then will go on, but then you can use a key. But it is not a quick swap between cap and seat, so that kind of sucks, but it is what it is. It's no big deal. There's worse things that could be wrong with the bike, such as like if you had the V4, you got to take the fairings off and put the foot pegs on and all that other jazz, and it's just a mess. It's almost not even worth ever having a passenger even on it. So gearbox, and it is smooth. Obviously, it was super tight at first, but now that it is got some miles on it, it's definitely loosening up. As far as the handlebars and handle grips, which is a big thing for me on motorcycles, they're not too squishy, but they're not too hard. So, and they obviously don't provide too much like of that buzz vibration or anything like that, which a lot of people complain about on the GSXR, that you do get that. I didn't really experience any of that within the Yamaha, but you absolutely have to be prepared that it's not going to be as smooth as like a CBR or GSXR or BMW, because this bike has a cross-plane crank. So it's definitely going to provide you with a little bit more of a jerkiness and rigid ride than the traditional style crankshaft that on some of those other motorcycles, not here on this one. Tires, Bridgestone. I've never been the biggest fan of Bridgestone tires, but you know what? They came on the bike. I'm going to use them. Probably when they get swapped out, I'm probably going to go to Dunlops. I really like that for a street and track tire. They give me a good amount of grip. They last a good amount of time. They hold up to the burnouts and stuff really well. But I have no complaints about them. I think this Bridgestone tire is definitely the best Bridgestone tire that they've put out. But like those battle axes and stuff like that, I have never ever cared for those tires. I thought they sucked, whether they were hot, cold, or anything like that. But this bike actually has the same tire that's on the GSXR, and it actually is holding up very well. So good job on that, Bridgestone. Anything else that I want to touch on? The display is obviously really good. Headlights are really good for commuting at night and just commuting back and forth. Of course, you just obviously have to understand this is a crotch rocket. It is not a cruiser, so you're definitely going to want to be in that race mode, obviously, when you're riding versus when you're on a cruiser. You're kind of like looking around, just taking your time. But overall, I give it a pretty good score, and I don't have really anything too bad to beat it up with. I could cruise on this bike back and forth to work, no problem, which actually absolutely surprised me, given the fact that it is a more track-orientated motorcycle. So, like I said, it's obviously not as comfortable as the BMW and the Suzuki, but it's nowhere near as bad as the V4 or anything like that. So, that's my quick review on this and commuting with this bike. So can you commute with it? Absolutely. Does it get the best gas mileage? Absolutely not, but it's definitely by far from the worst. So it's right in that middle segment and stuff like that. But the things where this bike does shine with the electronics and obviously going around a circuit track, being flickable and leaning and stuff like that, it absolutely does it very well. And every bike in my stable does what it's supposed to do very well. And even as much shit as I talk about Yamaha, the V4, the GSXR, stuff like that, even the V4, it's very good in what it does by being a track bike first and being a street bike second. So that's going to wrap it up here for commuting here on the 2018 R1M. So that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. If you guys like what you saw, again, don't forget to subscribe. Smash that like button if you liked it. And of course, Facebook, Instagram, @SpeedBug, same name here as YouTube. And we will catch y'all for another episode here on the SpeedBug channel. Deuces, y'all. Ride safe.